The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call for October 16th. I'm glad you're all here. We've got a pretty crowded agenda today, so we're going to get started right away. And hats off to the 33 people who are on already, and I know we'll get more as the call goes on. So we have been in conversations with FHFA, and while things are a little slow on the legislative front, I thought we'd lean on Matthew to kind of give an update on what we're doing with FHFA so people are aware. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, thanks, Bruce. So yeah, we just had a good conversation with FHFA. We also met with them when we were in DC, I guess maybe 3 weeks or a month or so ago now. But we meet periodically with them and talk with them regularly, and just wanted to give a little update on some of the issues that we've been working on with them. So the first thing we want to talk about, which is actually something that's a new issue that we've just started raising with them, and that's asking them to have Fannie and Freddie disclose housing counseling to investors. So the idea here is that Fannie and Freddie bundle mortgages, securitize them, make them into a mortgage-backed security, and then sell them to investors. They disclose all kinds of information so that investors know what's in these bundles, the quality of the loans that they're buying, and so we're encouraging them now to disclose whether a loan has been counseled through a HUD-approved agency. This kind of tracks with a lot of the work that we've talked a lot about in terms of they are going to start including a data field on counseling and the agency counseling data fields on the mortgage application. So it's just kind of taking that to the next step, saying, okay, once you start collecting all of this information, you should be reporting it to investors. And the idea being that, if there's a bunch of loans in a portfolio that are made to LMI borrowers, that the loans look more attractive to investors if they've been counseled. It's also, just part of this bigger campaign that this is one of many prongs that we've been working on in terms of getting counseling more integrated into the various mortgage processes. So we just started raising it with them. It's an issue that we're going to keep working on, and we're pretty excited about it as a prospect. Bruce, is there anything you want to add on that one?
No, that's it.
All right, great. This is also a relatively new development that we started working on, is tracking the borrower's preferred language. So the issue there is we've been talking a lot about language access. And as I just mentioned, we're working with FHFA on adding data fields to the mortgage application. So the idea here is that at application, you get the borrower's preferred language. That way, if the borrower's preferred language is not English, that information is captured, and it can be tracked for the life of the loan. It can go to the servicer. So this would be a huge step in making sure that servicers have that information, and also, a big step in kind of formalizing language access. Making sure that it's information that's being tracked and followed and available. We think it would be a huge step in making some improvements in the various issues that we've seen with language access. Bruce, anything on that?
Well, so the idea is that, as you know, we've gotten more some housing counseling data fields that look like they'll be included in the application. You get the if you can capture the preferred language at that moment as well, that information then travels with the loan, so that at the so when the servicing rights get sold, that will continue to be available to the servicer. And here's the problem: is that servicers routinely tell us, well, they can't figure out what languages people speak because they don't know. So this, at least going forward, is a big solution. Now, we just introduced this to them, and it's a little bit late in the game on the redesign, but it's not the end of the field. So, and it did get an okay reception. So we'll see. We'll keep you informed. But mean, the nice thing about this is all, as Matthew said, part of trying to build structural opportunities for housing counseling and our work and our empowering our clients to be built into the system.
Great. And again, so we raise these are new issues that we're raising to them. So it's early in the process, but they're definitely issues that they're interested in, and I think we can get some traction on. So we'll keep the updates coming. The last issue that we talked about a few other things, but for now we're just going to talk about a few of the issues, and that's the issues that anyone on here I think that uses HCO is familiar with. It's something that we've been bringing up with them regularly. Judy Hunter talked about it at the meeting in D.C. And also talked about it on the phone call today. The issue here is the lack of investment in HCO, the real frustration that people in the field are experiencing in terms of the lack of any kind of customer service. So anytime there's an issue, you're basically going it alone and can't get any support from HCO. So I think the folks that we were on the phone with, there wasn't anyone that works directly with HCO, but we're kind of putting it on their radar, people at FHFA. We did hear, we brought it up with Sandra Thompson at the meeting in D.C. She did seem to suggest that there were changes coming with HCO. She wouldn't, say what that meant, whether that was that they're going to invest in it and try to save it and make it something that's workable and usable and help actually, functional, or if it meant that they were going to go another route and come up with something else. We are really stressing to them that in the meantime, that's, whatever you're going to do in the future, we'll be happy to work with you, and, our end goal is just having something that works. But in the meantime, you really need to step up the customer service and make sure that there's support for people in the field.
Yeah, and they've been reporting problems and being able to submit your 9902 data, continue these problems, and as Matthew said, the help desk has not been helpful in the way it should be. And I guess sort of the bigger overarching question that that Judy's raised, a bunch of people have raised, is sort of what's the long-term future for HCO? Is Fannie Mae committed to HCO, and which means that it's underfunded and needs to have new investment in it and its support systems, or is it is there going to be a plan to somehow transition it, and if it transitions, make sure that whoever has to take it over is properly funded as well to make sure that there's not a loss in usability. So that's the beginning of a conversation. If we left out problems with the HCO, you should definitely either put this in the box or shoot us an email. We'll continue following this up. And we just had a call this morning with a team of people at FHFA. Judy Hunter was on the call from RCAC, Jane Duong from National Capacity, L.A. Pepper from Empire Justice Center, David Young from Housing Action Illinois, and Song Hitchens from Asian Americans. And, we have, we'll continue pursuing this down the line. Obviously, FHFA manages or regulates Fannie and Freddie. Actually, I should bring up one other thing, which is a perennial issue that I know counselors worry about all the time, which is principal reduction and the frustration that Mel Watt, who came in and has done some very good things already, has not come out on in favor of principal reduction publicly. And so we did raise that, and they said essentially it was still under consideration. They were trying to figure out the numbers on it. They referenced their work in Detroit, but I'm pretty sure that very little of that is really about principal reduction in the way that we think about it. So they did say that 80% of the city is underwater. Pretty amazing. But we'll an area we're going to continue pursuing on FHFA. We have a guest today from eHome, Milt Sharp. Many of you know him. He's been making the circuits and has a long history with NeighborWorks as well. And so welcome, Milt.
Hey, greetings, everyone, and thank you for having me on today, Bruce. So will I be just saying advance the slides, or will I advance?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Next slide. So thank you all for having me on today. A few moments here to just kind of talk to you a little bit about eHome America, and I'm told that at a future point in time that we can do a more in-depth webinar. I'm sure that information will be sent out to you all. I hope you would join us on that. But real quickly, I just wanted to point out eHome America has three main business goals. One of them is to look at increasing the revenue and sustainability of local counseling agencies, as well as eHome America. We also want to look at increasing the perceived value of homeownership education and counseling services by consumers as well as our partners, and increase the market share of first-time home buyers who receive homeownership education and counseling. I'm told it's estimated at less than 10% now, so there's quite a bit of room for us to grow in this space. Certainly what will get us there is a healthy, sustainable business model. Next slide. So in terms of background for eHome America, it is a web-based education program for prospective home buyers that are linked directly to local HUD-approved housing counseling agencies and services. It was developed by Community Ventures Corporation, which is a nonprofit part of the NeighborWorks network in Kentucky, and was originally created as the purpose of being able to provide homeownership education and counseling services to their consumers who were in rural locations who oftentimes would need to travel more than an hour or so to receive access to homeownership education and counseling services. So they developed this product specifically for them, and since then has grown tremendously. It's currently based on Realizing the American Dreams curriculum that's developed by NeighborWorks America, and it exceeds the national industry standards for homeownership education and counseling in that it typically takes a consumer anywhere from 6 to 8 hours to complete the education. Next slide. In terms of the features of eHome America, it is in English and Spanish, and we just recently updated our Spanish translation to ensure that it was culturally competent for consumers. There are over 40 videos within there with the text to assist learners in the education. Key terms that are there are highlighted and defined with the glossary so that there can be a greater understanding of the knowledge and information that they would need for the home buying process. It's written to a modest reading level. If I remember correctly, it's at about the 8th grade level. Customers can stop and start at any time, so they have the flexibility to be able to start this education whenever it's convenient for them, stop and pick up where they left off at. There is a certificate of completion that can be printed out upon completion. However, many of our partner agencies require that they meet with them for a follow-up one-on-one counseling session after they've received this online education. So upon completion, they're provided with information on the next steps necessary for them to move forward with meeting with a counselor and receiving their education. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about 6 to 8 hours to complete it. They can go backwards, but they cannot jump forward in the program without the completion of tests at the end of each chapter, which would require at least an 80% passing as well. Next slide. So in terms of our revenue sharing model, we currently charge a base price for eHome America at $99. We do allow our agency partners to charge more than that, but they are not able to charge less than $99, or they're not able to display the pricing for eHome America at less than $99. There are discount codes that are available to reduce the price. We do reduce it for our USDA customers by $24, making it $75 for all USDA customers and clients. eHome charges a $25 admin fee for each customer who goes through the education, and we collect that out of the registration fee made possible by those who registered. The remaining balance at $74 is actually returned in revenue to our agency partners in support of their homeownership education and counseling programs and services. Next slide. So again, this was just a quick overview and a quick snapshot of eHome America. certainly when we provide you all with a more in-depth webinar that we can then not only talk more in-depth about the success that eHome has had. We've counseled or had over 80,000 consumers built through our education so far. Tremendous growth, 375 partner agencies across the country. We're in every state, including Puerto Rico and Guam, and I look forward to the ability to be able to share with you all more about eHome America at a future point in time. So, Bruce, with that, I turn it back over to you all. And again, thank you for your time for a brief moment to share with you eHome America. I look forward to our continued partnership and relationship with the housing counseling industry and helping them to build their sustainability and create efficiency in the delivery of homeownership education and counseling service. So again, thank you.
Milt, don't go away. And if people have some questions, they should post them now or try to call in. So first thing is that we do have a webinar scheduled with Milt and the eHome folks, which is next week at the same time. So 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific, and you can figure out the rest for the rest of the country. So it's coming Thursday of next week, and it'll be an hour-long deeper dive into eHome America. So Milt, so are there upfront fees for the agency to participate?
Yes, there are. For agencies to participate, there is a registration and setup fee, and it's actually based on the service size of folks. So if you are in an area and you are servicing 50,000 or more, there's a $1,000 registration and setup fee. And what that does is that provides us with the resources to develop a unique URL landing page for your organization, which would be customized with your information, as well as provide customer support to any of your clients who go through eHome and need assistance. If you're in an area and you are serving 49,999 or less, the registration fee is actually cut in half. It would be $500. In both instances and scenarios, the admin fee would be $25. We do offer agencies the ability to sign up for eHome at a much lower reduced registration fee at $200. However, you would have a higher admin fee at $30 per customer who would utilize our platform. So $1,000 for 50,000 or more, $500 for 49,999 or less, or $200 at a $30 admin fee, and you would be at that $30 admin fee for at least 1 year from sign up.
And are there any other agency requirements?
HUD certified, for sure, and typically we want most, if not all, of our partner agencies to provide follow-up one-on-one counseling for the clients who receive the online education.
And so, actually, I just saw this on your website when I was looking a little earlier. It says that each participant in this course will be directly connected to a NeighborWorks chartered member, often to a member in the area. So is this only for NeighborWorks groups? It looked like you had a broader range of groups.
Actually, no. That information needs to be updated. My apologies. It is not exclusive to NeighborWorks organization. Any HUD-certified housing counseling agency can utilize, and we have quite a few that do utilize eHome America.
And is there a way that eHome would bring customers to the agency? So I can understand that agencies would refer people to the education program, but is there a way that it could build a customer base for the counseling agency?
Absolutely, and that specifically happens through partnerships and relationships with lenders. eHome, and again, when we give our presentation on the 23rd, we can share some of the other tools and things that we have to assist you in building your business and utilizing eHome America. But a lot of that can be created through partnerships and relationships with lenders and housing finance agencies, as well as in certain states where we have partnerships and relationships with the Federal Home Loan Bank.
So we've had a bunch of questions come in, so I'm just going to jump in with some. The first is, so the fee's $99. The question is, what if it's a husband and wife? Would it be $198?
It can be. We ask our partner agencies to actually tell us what they would like to charge for that second bar, or oftentimes many of them will charge full price for one and then half price for the other.
Okay. There's a request for your contact info, which I'll send out after, but can you give it to me and I'll just send it out to the audience now?
Right. Yeah. Any information requests about eHome America can be sent to support@ehomenetwork.org.
All right. So I'm sending that out now. Once an agency signs up for eHome, is there any special training?
Yes. So after they've signed up, there is an admin training that takes place, because there are admin features within eHome America that assist our partner agencies in managing their pipeline, as well as providing them with the information that they'll need to meet one-on-one with clients after they've completed. So there is a follow-up webinar that's held with whomever is identified as the admin for the agency, as well as any additional counselors who may would like to have access to this information.
Great. There's a question: is there a way agencies can review the course prior to signing up so they know exactly what the clients are seeing?
Absolutely. And so in order to ensure that you join us for our next webinar on the 23rd, that everyone who joins us on that webinar will be provided with a demo code where they'll be able to go in and experience eHome America and review it, and also receive an invitation to join us at our own webinars that we hold twice a month, where we do a product overview and agency partner registration information.
Great. Is the training HUD certified, or is the course HUD certified, is the question?
So the agencies are the HUD certified agencies. The course in and of it by itself is not HUD certified. It's HUD approved.
Right. But it would, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that.
Yes,
that
it meets HUD's requirements, if that's the
right.
question.
Okay, great. To date, how many clients have completed eHome?
We've had over 80,000 complete.
All right. And then the
And
last...
since our inception in 2009. We've had a 50% growth each year, with our highest growth from between 2012 to 2013, where we see roughly about a 50% growth each year.
Great. And the last question is, and this may be, so the question is, when is the next admin webinar scheduled to be held? I think you were saying those were after an agency signs up. Is that right? It's not just like a general...
Yes, that's after they sign up. But those who are interested in joining and becoming eHome partner agencies are actually, our next webinar is scheduled after the webinar that we'll be conducting with you all on the 23rd.
All right. One more. Can we count clients as group education clients for HUD purposes?
Yes. And HUD will only allow you to count those folks if you're providing follow-up one-on-one counseling.
All right.
So, and how does that get tracked? What's the mechanism inside eHome to allow you to?
So we have there are reports, and again, I said there are admin features within eHome that you can generate, which would have demographic information from the registration and everything that you can then either import into your client management system, or in our case, we have a client management system that we're working on that we'll be rolling out, but that's for another discussion.
And then the last thing, so there does seem to be some confusion on the HUD approval, and can Bruce or Milt or someone just kind of get into how it interacts with HUD in terms of the approval versus the... Someone is questioning whether HUD approves internet education.
Yeah, HUD absolutely approves online education, and if you're familiar with recently what came out even in the Federal Register, that it was called out in the HAWK program as well. And HUD has indicated that in order for you to count those clients, that you would need to provide a one-on-one counseling session. Now, many of our partner agencies oftentimes don't always include those numbers as a part of their HUD count, because they're using their grants to provide the face-to-face and the services that aren't necessarily covered through payment from clients, but HUD will allow not only online education but also the charging of the fee. And Bruce, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, actually, let me ask maybe a clarifying question here. So HUD accepts online education, and I think that's pretty clear. But HUD didn't actually endorse eHome or certify eHome, right?
That's correct. An endorsement and an approval is very different. I didn't say that they endorsed that.
Or certify.
They don't endorse any online
Right.
education.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I think that might be the confusion there, right?
Right. HUD does not make any endorsements for any online education.
Right. Right. Good.
And just one kind of, I guess, testimonial from Jason Thomas at CEI in Maine, that they use eHome at this time. And what they do is after a client has completed eHome, they do a 1-hour follow-up session and then use these clients as individual pre-purchase clients for 9902 purposes, not as a group or workshop participant.
Great.
Good.
Thanks for that clarification.
Well, so Milt, next week, Thursday of next week, 1 o'clock Eastern, and when Matthew puts out his summary of the call, the link will be there, and we'll put out a reminder as well next week. But it looks like there's a lot of interest, a lot of good questions, so we should have a good
Looking forward
turnout
to it.
for it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks. Great. Take care, man. Okay. So just keeping everybody up to date on HUD Task Force kinds of issues. We, on point of contact, as you know, there have been, in our community, there have been some concerns about point of contacts not being as responsive or as flexible as needed, and how do we register complaints like that. And what HUD had said is we should, counselors or agencies should send in to housing.counseling@hud.gov. And so that's one avenue of doing it. We'd also raised at the marathon meeting we had last month with Sarah Jarek and her staff that some people would prefer not to do this as an email and would rather do this as a conversation. And the kind of the mechanism to do that through would be to go to Jerry Mayer, who is in charge of training. So their view of this is that these create training opportunities for their staff, and they are, they're really working hard on being good listeners about complaints and actively embracing these as opportunities to improve their work. And that's straight from Sarah, and you all know her pretty well by now, and I think this is completely sincere, and they're very interested in trying to make it work. So if you're not, so certainly feel free to use the housing.counseling@hud.gov, but if an alternative path is to call up Jerry Mayer and raise the issues with him. Second on the list, personal activity reports. So we've done a lot of kind of deeper dives since the meeting on in September, and the HUD Task Force met a couple weeks ago. And where we landed on this question was, it has come up several times, Sarah has said this several times, that there's some agencies that are not struggling with these. So our interest is in identifying which agencies are finding the personal activity reports to be no big sweat. And for what we'd like to do is figure out a set of best practices. So you all probably know Laura Buxbaum and Jason Thomas. Jason was the one who just sent in that last comment. So Jason seems to have, and the people at CEI have figured out how to make the personal activity work, process reasonably painless. And so what we're wanting to do is we're going to talk with Jason, but we're also going to talk with others as well. So we're interested in, please elevate where it's working reasonably well for you, and you think we can learn from it. And what we think the kind of the model is to have a good timesheet system that meshes easily with HCO or Counselor Max, and then really understanding how to make HCO and Counselor Max work in your favor in this reporting system, which it's not intuitively obvious. It's one that people need to learn. And we'll probably the result of this will be to create a kind of a training session, webinar, where we'll try to get some of these models together and do it for the industry, and we'll publicize this widely, and hopefully we'll have HCO and Counselor Max participate. So my ask to you is, if you're feeling pretty confident that your personal activity report isn't that onerous, it would be great if you could email us, and we'll try to make you part of the team that's going to help be a big industry solution. This is a tremendous drain on our psychic and administrative capacity, so we want to solve this one. And the last big point was on follow-up from the meeting in D.C. in September. We discussed a few different models, and what the idea is that we'll actually do the HUD task force. We'll meet with Sarah again, and we've already talked with her about it. She's very eager to do this. Probably be a few weeks down the line, but certainly the results of that we will talk about it at length on one of these calls, and try to keep everybody on the same page. So
you have
okay.
Just one kind of unrelated, well, related question is
okay.
Whether there's an update on the housing counselor certifications.
This had been on my list, and I was expecting that we would have some information, and we don't. So there is no new information. I had hoped, the rumor that I'd heard was that that the certification process would correspond with with the contract year, so starting October 1. We're on the 16th. No sign has surfaced on this, so it doesn't sound like we're going to make that deadline. And I don't have anything else to add, but we will continue asking and certainly post and discuss on them as soon as we get more information. Okay, let's see. So quick follow-up on our meeting with the Secretary. So one of the things we'd want to do is to elevate housing counseling in the public eye, and ask him if he, when he traveled, would do visits to housing counseling offices, events, et cetera, et cetera. 2 weeks ago, he went to Anchorage, Alaska to present there, and went to the NeighborWorks Anchorage office and met with staff. I think they were in a counseling session and some clients, and I've heard it went really, really well, though we're eager to get more details. And if you're from Anchorage and on the call, please send us a summary. I know you've got some good pictures. Send the pictures. We'll try to figure out how to post them and stuff like that. But, this is really great. I mean, literally within 3 weeks of when we talked to the Secretary, there's already been action on that. And that's terrific. So we'll try to figure out other events and opportunities. We don't control his schedule. We don't have any influence on his schedule. But the idea is that when he does go out and speak in other locations, to try to include a housing counseling event of some kind as part of as much travel as we can. On the question of the Technology Summit, of this idea of pulling together technology providers, funders, financial services industry, and ourselves to work on a real solution to all our technology challenges going forward, they very quickly after the meeting asked for some type of proposal. We gave them a broad outline. It's apparently been well received and is kind of percolating in their system, but green light on the first step. So again, a very favorable response, and I know that they are a very busy operation, and we've heard that it's very active, so the fact that we're getting this level of attention is just great. We did invite him to the December 11th meeting, the leaders meeting, and we'll ask him if he can join us for lunch and then for the first hour of the general meeting, and around the theme of access to credit. And we'll have some bullet points under that. So no commitments yet, but we may not know for a little while. But we've got several key people who we've invited into the meeting that are policymakers, and he's one of them. We'll see what happens, but we'll remain hopeful on it. Okay, So let's move on to another area that we've been doing a lot of work in over the last couple of years, and other groups are doing a lot of work in. And so we recently had a meeting with Richard Cordray, head of CFPB, that we were part of a meeting that Americans for Financial Reform sponsored, but we were actually a big part of it because we took on kind of the servicing issues. But I think the whole range of issues affect our work, and we're very interested in them. So one of the key participants in that meeting was NCLR and Nancy Wilberg-Ricks. And is Nancy on the line? Are you here, Nancy?
I am, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, yay.
Good. All right.
Great. Should I take it over?
All
right.
Well, sure. Good. Yeah, why don't you?
No, keep talking.
Well, I was going to ask questions to you, but you know, actually, what give me your highlights from the meeting with Cordray, and what do you think your impression was?
Well, I mean, as in general, I felt like it actually went better than some of our other conversations. I felt like we're sort of all in it to win it as far as this issue goes. So I felt a little more encouraged than other meetings that we have had. But I could do a quick rundown unless you want to add any other comments at the top. Okay,
That sounds good, yeah.
Basically, the genesis of that meeting was a couple of reasons that CFPB wanted to release several of its new resources, but also indicate that they were putting out for public comment their new language access plan. So that everyone is open to obviously submit their own public comment on their language access plan, which is the period is wrapping up January 6th, so there's plenty of time, and I would recommend anyone who wants to kind of peruse it and offer your thoughts. It's at the Federal Register for the taking. So they wanted to talk to all of us about the issues related to language access, and then also release their Money Smart for older adults, and then managing someone else's money materials. So those also are online, and I imagine we can provide links to that. But basically with the CFPB, they had language goals, and then we and our coalition partners had language goals. And the CFPB, you could tell they really wanted to hear from, I would say, and Bruce, you can kind of qualify that if you want, but I feel like they really did want to know if they were being effective. So they, of course, tout 180 languages for their complaint portal, for example, but we, as Bruce often is so great at citing, that even if the language capability is there, the technical insight and skill isn't always, you know, one and the same with the interpreters. And so the CFPB wanted to know if they were being effective, and ultimately to be able to tease out where companies are being non-compliant and how they can disseminate victim funds efficiently, all under the lens of language access, so ensuring they're reaching families who may not use English as their first language, or their preferred language. So, and ultimately, obviously, for the financial empowerment aspect, that kind of zeroed in on their actual empowerment program, which, Bruce, I'm not sure how much you guys discuss over these meetings, but I guess we won't go too far into that right now, but that's a point of conversation that I know that we need to have with the CFPB as far as its impact with housing counseling groups versus non-housing counseling groups, libraries, and so on, where they offer financial information. Anyway, we won't get into that because I know
just worth saying, and Judy Hunter's been really great.
Yeah, you tell me.
The problem is that nobody's against financial empowerment, but what they're really asking people to do is a lot of the kinds of things that you really want an expert to work with you on. You know, sure, you could go ahead and buy a house, but it'd be better if you bought a house with a housing counselor. And the financial empowerment materials are asking social workers and librarians and teachers to take on these tasks, and certainly there's like, you can make people familiar with the vocabulary, but you're not really going to analyze somebody's credit report. You're not going, I mean, there's just the stuff that is basic to our work. And what actually you have these meetings, then you have these conversations in the corridor afterwards. And so Gail Hillebrand is head of the, and you may have known she used to be at AARP, and or was it Consumers Union? She was at Consumers Union, but very bright, good advocate in her day, and is now her comment was, well, we wouldn't send. What she didn't understand was that housing counselors do financial counseling, is maybe the best way to say it. So that when they were talking about all these financial issues, and we'd say, well, you should really talk to a housing counselor about that. She was saying, well, yeah, but it's not about buying a house. Well, no, but we help people fix credit. We do all those things, and so what we're in a conversation. If you want to participate, please let me know. We only have a couple people actually in this conversation. If you want to be involved in trying to regroup these materials, we have a conversation happening with the CFPB people who are writing some of these materials right now. So anyways, it's one more place where it could be a great place to bring people into counseling, and right now it's going around them.
Yeah, so I mean, this point is, I think, really crucial for a lot of folks to offer input if they could, because I wouldn't say it subverts what some folks are doing, but the expertise is already out there in our counseling groups, and so we just want to make sure that they can get clients can get as much help as possible, and we just want to make that clear to the CFPB. So those are sort of the CFPB goals, and then when it comes to the partnership goals, what we presented in our portion of the agenda had to do with language access in credit reporting, in debt collection. There was a nice, healthy section on mortgage servicing on some of those issues that you guys are so familiar with. So servicing standard compliance challenges and countering those, the third-party presentation from housing counselors if they're not recognized as third-party representation. The terms of the mortgage are in different languages from follow-up materials and so on. I can go in deeper there as well. But and then finally, CFPB outreach, which is the piece that I covered and involved just holding up CFPB as aspiring to be the gold standard itself, so that not only can they produce best practices, they can finesse their own work and curate best practices, but they can ultimately just do their job as, identifying compliance issues. If they themselves can't reach the communities that are having trouble with, under the lens of language access, then how can they identify folks who are violating their rights? So I think there are multiple levels that the CFPB being a gold standard would be most productive, and I pointed out several instances where they don't actually do any outreach at all in any other language, in any language other than English. So that is there are plenty of places for us to follow up on, but those were some of the highlights. And I don't know, Bruce, if you want to go deeper into some of the mortgage servicing aspects, but that was sort of
good. I mean, I think
the way we were left.
Yeah, and when we met with the CFPB in September, one of the things that came out of that meeting was they were saying, well, we understand that people could be inconvenienced by this and may not like it, but we actually have to show and prove that there was real harm. So our job in this conversation was to show that there was real harm. And we did that by lots of the kind of examples that you all have elevated, and Jane Duong and Song Hutchins were two of the leading people producing examples. Jane was on the call on the meeting, and and these were the things that you all know about. So there was an incident where. This was Song's case, where this woman had gotten a modification on a loan, came in because she was in foreclosure on the second, I think it was a man, and speaks English, but is not totally fluent in English. He's Korean, I believe. And they're going through all the correspondence, and there was a letter there that from GMAC, and it was an extinguishment of the second position loan, which was $200,000, serious loan, and he'd gotten it a year ago. He had called up, and his understanding of the conversation was that, in fact, it was just a forbearance, and it did not get rid of the loan, and so he didn't want to agree to it. And this was simply a language barrier. A year later, we got the song. They're far along in the foreclosure, and the extinguishment agreement has been retracted. It's no longer valid, and you may see has gone a long way in this past time already. So what a tragedy, and this family may lose their house as a result, even though in fact, had there been better, clearer communication, then we could have not gone anywhere near that way. And then Jane had an example of one of their affiliates where a woman was with a counselor but got a call from the lender directly, the servicer directly. She did not understand what they were saying, but heard the word modification, and she said yes, and it was an agreement to waive her HAMP modification to get a much worse, less affordable modification. And they were able to actually intervene on that one because the counselor was in place. But the stuff happens all the time, and we keep going on and on. Modification offers that were missed, all that sort of thing that happens. And I would like it if on the list could be humiliation and waste of time, but it needed to be harm. And I think the message we got from the CFPB afterwards was that we did a really good case establishing harm. Our complication is that the CFPB and Cordray said this as well as others in the room, are struggling with the question of what their authority is. So they're very interested in doing positive things to help the situation, but the question is, do they have the authority to, and essentially incur lots of costs to the servicer for having a new burden? So we would think of it as responsibility. Does that capture it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and that's partly why we've gone to the FHFA route, which is a way of, with FHFA, of including language preference on the mortgage application. We're hoping that that will be something that solves the problem going forward. Unfortunately, it doesn't help, the hundreds of thousands of people in this situation who have existing mortgages. And so we will still need to keep knocking on the door. And so we're doing that with CFPB. We're also doing it with FHFA, and part of the call this morning was to raise that on them again. We had brought it up with Sandra Thompson, who is the boss of the people we're meeting with. But I think the meeting we had today was with more of the people who are the frontline workers who have to deal with the nitty-gritty policy, and we wanted to get them on this as well. I mean, do you have some more thoughts about what we should be doing in the language access area, Nancy?
Me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that I keep trying to, we want some tangible suggestions. That idea of always bringing complaints is one thing. I don't think we do that. I think we almost always offer solutions, and I feel like right now what they really are searching for is our strong models, so that they're clearly asking for help. They're putting out the comment period. They're doing all those elements, but I think they want real tangible models to see what's working, what's not. And I've mentioned before that when it comes to some people are doing this well, not just in the public sector, but also private sector. So I think it's a moment for us to actually get creative, because language access has some interesting idiosyncrasies with each population, each different language. But I think there are ways that we can really offer some insight right now. So to me, I would say tangible models, examples, who's doing it right, and obviously with an awareness of cost. But one thing that we always mention is how that much of the expertise and services we think are most productive are already housed within counseling groups. And so that's obviously something that we want to continue to get the message across.
And you're actually making a very specific ask of us, right? So you're collecting these.
I am, yeah. I think that's what we need right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in Washington, a lot of times we talk about theory, but I really do think they're trying to, flesh out some real plan here.
So just to underline what the ask is here, so in your day-to-day life and your work, you see where language access may be working well, where there's good match between what language people speak and what the services they're being provided and by whom they're being provided. And it would be really good if we had, individual examples and with, names and places and contact information that we could be used as models. And CFPB this is what they're trying to figure out. Nancy's volunteered to be the collector of these things. And
yes.
Congratulations. And
thank you.
And so it would be really good if you could identify and elevate to her those things that are that would be places where you think, boy, this is really working, and it should be a model for the industry. And maybe it becomes a best practice. Maybe it becomes a regulatory rule. I mean, there's a range of ways that this gets involved. But the point, I guess, is that we need to know what's happening in your city and or in your work sphere that makes this all more effective. It's interesting in California because there's now a language requirement around 5 languages. And I bet some places have embraced that more than others. And we ought to look at what success looks like. On today's call with FHFA, Jane brought up that in the healthcare industry, where there's been a mandate for a while on language access, and they have very specific needs. You can't diagnose somebody's problem if you can't talk to them, they've come up with pretty aggressive solutions. So what do they look like and how do they work? One more thing we want to change in our world. Well, good. So please shoot your information to Nancy, and we'll put your email in the wrap-up that we do. Do you have any other thoughts you want to share with us? There was talk about credit reporting and debt collection. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we kind of took away from that was blue sky requests. So Cordray, in a dream world, what were we looking at? And
right.
Basically that, people could operate within the language of preference from the outset. So when it came to credit reporting, your request would be in your language of preference. The material you received would be as well. And finally, if you spotted an error, that you could actually get assistance to correct that error in their horribly flawed system, but you could still, have a fair shake at talking about, what your needs are in your own language of preference. So that was credit reporting. And I would venture that was sort of the same thing we were hoping for in debt collection, that one's preferred language would be specified at the outset, and then that would follow the file throughout, whatever complications are encountered in debt collection. So through the flow of services. And I think that's about the gist of it. Otherwise, I'm sure we could disseminate some of Chi-Chi Wu, who presented on it, some of her thoughts on the matter.
This reminds me, back in the days when I was running counseling programs, one of the things that we would come across occasionally were people in the servicing unit, but I bet this happens in debt collection as well, where they would threaten people's immigration status. I wonder if that still happens. I mean, those kind of incidents we should be elevating and
absolutely
telling the CFPB I mean, things have been ratcheted down a lot in the way that servicing is
Yeah.
done. It used to be that debt collection and servicing were really the same business. Now we've kind of won a lot of the modification argument, but there's still elements of that culture in there, and we should elevate that if we find out about it.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that Cordray said again, and he said to us a year and a half ago when we first brought this up, and when we did a spring of 2013, when we did all these meetings to kind of engage housing counseling with the various regulators and administration departments, he said, well, if you can sell in a language, then you should be able to service in that language. And you know, and he brought that up again in this meeting. I'll be honest. I think that's too low a standard. I think that if you have a customer with a particular language or customer base in that language, that you should service it whether or not you originally sold the loans in that language. Because I mean, there's two issues. One is you might have had a originator who didn't speak the language who sold loans to people, which happened a fair amount, and people were quite surprised when they found out what they got. And it's also, if you sold that language and sold the servicing rights, does that travel with the servicer? I'd much rather the standard be that you need to service based on the language populations that you've got. And one of the nuances of the proposals that we've made is that while you should, we understand that you're not going to have every language capacity, but you certainly should do large bulks of them. But for example, you might have, not nationally, but you might have some local markets that have a concentration. So Hmong population is in parts of California and parts of Minnesota. They may not be in other parts of the country as much, but if you've got loan density in those areas, you should be able to service them properly in that language. So things like that. Well, good.
Yeah.
You know, we always appreciate the work that NCLR does, and glad to have you back, Nancy. Nancy's was on maternity leave for a while, and has a healthy child. All very good.
Yes, glad to be back. Thank you.
Yay, good. So good. Well, we'll stay in touch. Thanks for your contribution.
Thank
All
you.
right. Let's see. So, and one other thing actually that was mentioned, the FHA call this morning, I thought I'd put out to you. They asked us a question, which was, have we noticed an uptick in delinquencies in the middle of the country? So they're seeing an overall decline in serious delinquencies and in foreclosures, but they saw a month-to-month increase in 30-day lates in the middle of the country, which I assume means the Midwest, going up and down the Mississippi. And so does anybody have any thoughts or insights on that? So, you know, put it in the comment box or send it to Matthew and me. It would be good to give them some feedback if we can. If we've got some insights, if we don't, not a problem. This is very highly sensitive data because they see it flow through every day, and they could just be a blip. It'd be great to let them know about it. So very quickly, so we have our December 11th meeting. I'm actually getting very pumped for this, Leaders in Housing Counseling meeting. So we'll do our, we'll have a special meeting for NHRC members and a lunch and in the morning, and then from 1 to 6 we'll have our general meeting. We're inviting in some high-powered people, but we also think that you're high-powered and we want you there. And, I think everybody gets a lot out of this. It would be helpful if you want to spend a few minutes just thinking about what would be most useful, what we would like to see in these meetings. We can do advocacy, we can do discussion among ourselves, we can evaluate what happened in next year. I'm always very interested in thinking about what we should be doing this upcoming year. But these are, we don't get that many opportunities for us all to kind of sit face-to-face, and this really is leadership in our community and senior people who are, big thinkers and hard workers, and this is a chance to kind of kick back and think seriously about our work and talk about it. So hope everybody has got that on their calendar and rearranged it, and make your reservations now, not just on us, but get the hotel, because DC does get expensive. And if it's expensive, look at Airbnb, and let's figure out how to get as many people there as possible. This is a very valuable meeting for us. It's partly what drives our work and helps us figure out what to do next. So on the membership front, we are, if you're a member, you already have seen this, but we're working on a bunch of webinars that will be specific just to member organizations, and they'll be around HUD compliance and some of the tools that people need. If you haven't done it already, we ask people just to quickly vote on which of the, it's like, I don't know, 20 some odd webinar possibilities. We'll probably do them at a rate of one a month or so, and so which one should we do first is kind of the big question here, and if you've got some ideas of ones that we didn't put on the list. So we'll do that. We've got a resource page that we're just trying to figure out how the website works to make it into a membership section, but hopefully that will be up in the next month, and that will end up with some fundraising resources and some good stuff about grants for home buying and stuff like that will make your work a little easier, I hope. And and we sent a link with the secret Goldman Sachs tapes on regulatory capture. If you missed it, there was a really fascinating program on This American Life, and I guess we sent it out to the members, but we send out notices periodically about funding opportunities and interesting things out there. But our next call for leaders will be in November 6th, and in a week from today, there'll be the eHome webinar with an hour-long session with Milt Sharp. All right, thanks everybody. We'll stay in touch.